Pabrai, with the work that you do and the sort of public educating that you've done more recently in your career, what is the message you're trying to convey, if you had to summarize that message, and exactly who are you trying to convey it to?
It really depends on what message. There are a few different mental models that I've figured out over the last few decades. When you have clarity on these mental models, and especially when you can start overlaying them, that's when you get 1 + 1 becomes 11. And so these mental models are not all in the same direction or in the same genre.
So just to pause there for a second. Yeah. So the word mental models means it's basically a framework for thinking.
Yes.
So one framework for thinking is this idea of cloning.
Yes.
As one such example.
Yes. Let's take the mental model of cloning.
Cloning,
right? So what we are taught is that if you want to start a business, you need to come up with something new, something that hasn't been done before. But the reality is that the world will very easily accept 3 of the same thing or 5 of the same thing. And usually it is an advantage to look at something that already exists and say, can another one of those exist, for example? Or can I take what's there and tweak it a little bit? So there's something peculiar in the human psyche, maybe going back into our history and our ancestral evolution, where humans look down upon cloning. But if you look at it, so for example, 2 of the greatest cloners, I think, in human history were Bill Gates and Sam Walton. Now, we think of Bill Gates as an innovator, and we think Sam Walton created Walmart, which was also new. But actually, they're both Me Too models. And Microsoft would not have existed without being a great cloner. So when we look at Microsoft Word, it came from WordPerfect.
Which was a company before.
A competitor that he took out. We look at Excel, it came from Lotus. We look at Bing, it came from Google. And you know what Bing is, but it's not Google. Everything that Microsoft has done well at has come from copying someone on the outside. And when we look at Sam Walton, who's, the Walton family, if you pool them all together, it's the richest family in the world. It's richer than Elon and everyone. And Sam Walton, by his own admission, would tell you that he has no original ideas. So originally, Walmart cloned Sears and Kmart.
For my international listeners, these are 2 big supermarket chains.
Yeah, and they're both gone. And in fact, Walmart buried them. And Sam Walton was one of the most intense cloners ever. So if he was driving on vacation with his family and he's passing some retail store, he would tell his family to stay in the car and he would go in the store just to check it out. And he said that there is no human who has lived in history or will live in the future who has visited more retail stores than he has. One time there was a manager of his and he would go in with his managers to these stores. Retail is one of the most transparent businesses. You can go into your competitor's store and you'll figure out the entire business model in 10 minutes. You don't need to talk to them. Okay, it's beautiful. So he went into this retail store and the manager says to him, "Oh, what a terrible operation. The whole store was topsy-turvy. It was really bad." And Sam says to him, "Yeah, but did you see the candle display? The candle display was fantastic." So Sam felt that he could learn from anyone. It didn't matter if you were a useless operator or a great operator or whatever, anyone in the middle. Walmart is just an amalgamation of ideas from other places. If you look at a company like Starbucks, we think of Starbucks as innovative. But actually what Howard Schultz did is he saw a concept in Italy. And his idea was that I think this would work in the US, right? And so he cloned that idea from Italy and brought that coffee shop experience to the US. If you are a great cloner, you will be 90% ahead or 95% of the rest of humanity. Now, another mental model, humans have this perspective that starting a business is risky. In reality, entrepreneurs do not take risk. They do everything in their power to minimize risk. And in many cases, when they embark on a business, the risk approaches zero. What is extremely risky is a 9-to-5 job, because we have one life, right? And it goes away, and you may not get to do what's in your heart. You may not get your music out, right? And so getting our music out is really important. So this notion, which is drilled into us, that if you're an entrepreneur, you're taking risk, really kind of does a big disservice to most humans. And if humans understood that if I embark on a business, I can do it in a format where the risk is zero or close to zero, and I can clone an existing business, right? Now you've combined two mental models, and we can start adding more to them. But 2 has become 11. 1 plus 1 has already become 11. It's nonlinear. And why is it that, why am I saying that entrepreneurs do not take risk? So if I take my own case as an example, and I can give you 100 cases like that, but if I take my own case as an example, I was working 9-to-5 at a company, and I had a business idea. My employer expected me to work 40 hours a week, right? There's 168 hours in the week. So I felt like there must be at least another 30, 40 hours that I could work on my startup.
Could you show me this in context of
Right.
this?
So if we look at our whole week, for example, these beautifully arranged Legos, if I take one of these blocks of Lego, so each one of those blocks in there is 2 hours. So 8 hours a day. We are sleeping 8 hours a day, right? And we're doing that 7 days a week, right? So basically, we've got 7 days a week, 8 hours a day, we're sleeping. The blue Legos are showing our 40 hours a week, 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, we're working, right? Then we get to other, preparing dinner and showering, shaving, getting ready, whatever else. So that's about 4 hours a day on the weekdays, which is including commute time, and about 8 hours a day on the weekend. Then we get to free time, social media and watching Netflix and hanging out with friends, going for dinner. And we've got quite a bit. We've got about 4 hours a day of doing that, and about 8 hours a day on the weekends. So this is kind of typical, what a typical week for most people would look like, right? Mm-hmm. Now, when you're starting a business, the important thing is don't shut off the cash flow. Some other yo-yo is paying your rent, and some other yo-yo is paying your groceries. So we don't want to rock the boat. But we're going to make one change to Blue.
Which is the amount of hours I'm working for my 9-to-5.
Now, before I started my startup, I used to get top reviews as an employee. I was very focused on doing a great job for my employer, all in, right? The day I decided I'm going to do my startup, I decided I need to be just above firing level. My performance needs to be just good enough so they don't can me, but nothing beyond that, because I need all my energy to go into my startup. So that's the only tweak I'm making is the Blue stays, but we're not doing extra blues like we were doing before, right?
And now, Blue, for anybody that can't see, because you're listening on audio, is work.
Exactly. Yeah. Blue is work. Exactly. Now, when we embark on a startup, we should never do a startup to make money. It's the worst reason to start a company. The purpose of business is not to make money. The purpose of business is to deliver an incredible product or service to humanity. If you do that, the money is a side effect. It'll happen. We don't need to focus on it. So what we are looking for is, do we have a product or a service that we are thinking about that we could bring into this world that is going to improve the world in some way?
How do I know if it's a good idea?
Whatever idea you have come up with is not going to work. Okay? Because you came up with it in an ivory tower between your ears. Okay? And that's not really a great place to find great ideas. What's going to happen is we're going to be doing what I call rapid prototyping, which is we take this idea and show humans what it is. And when you show it to humans, you will get feedback. So maybe I'll just give it in more practical terms. When I was starting my first business, it was going to be a IT services business, okay, information technology services, and I was going to be providing these services to very large businesses, companies that are $1 billion or more in earnings or cash flows. I was in a meeting with a senior IT guy at a very large bank in Chicago. And I was going through my PowerPoint deck with them. I came to the 10th slide, said my spiel, went to slide 11. So the boss who was sitting in the meeting said, go back to slide 10. So I went back to slide 10, again gave my speech that I had for slide 10 and took it to 11. He said, go back to slide 10 and do not change the slide. I don't have an interest in any other slide. Okay? So I took it back to slide 10. And all he wanted to talk about was what was on slide 10. My deck was talking about 7 things we could do. Slide 10 was one of those 7. It was an extreme pain point for him. He needed help on that one thing. He didn't need help on all the other riffraff stuff I was talking about. So when you're doing a startup, you have to be listening very carefully. Your customers or potential customers will tell you exactly what you need to do. Whatever you came up with, maybe 80% right or 70% right or 40% right. But your customer will tell you what is 100% right. Okay, because that's a real pain point. So I went back and thought about it. And I realized that his pain point, and I could see it was a severe pain point because he gave me a purchase order at the end of that meeting, was going to be a pain point for a lot of people. So I went back, I took slide 10, blew it up into 20 slides, and that became the deck. Okay, everything else got thrown out. Right now, I couldn't have done that without him. My brain is too small to have figured that out. So anytime you're doing a startup of any kind and you have a prototype or an early product or something going on, your users are going to tell you exactly what tweak they want.